All right. I have to admit that I think this section's a little hard to understand, so it might be a video or videos that you watch more than once, or definitely come in with questions if you have them. We're going to start off pretty simple again. We're going to basically talk about what we're talking about, right? We're going to be talking about investigating a geometric series, all right? So a series is an expression formed by adding the terms of a sequence. So you're not just getting the terms, you're adding them together. And if a geometric series has a finite number of terms, it's called a finite geometric series, which these will, all right? In this Explorer, you're going to generate several related finite geometric series and find a formula. That's our goal, to find a formula for calculating the sum of the series. So first, we're going to kind of start off on the most simple example we can. So let's say we have a rectangular sheet of paper that's 1 square unit. So that's just 1 by 1, right? We cut the sheet in half and lay down one of the pieces. So we cut this in half, we lay down this piece, all right? And then we cut the remaining piece in half and lay it down. So once we cut this side down and lay that down. And then again, we do it with the remaining and the remaining. So each piece, we're cutting smaller, all right, pieces every single time. All right. They cut the remaining piece in half and lay down the 1/4 piece as if rebuilding the original sheet of paper. Continue the process at each stage, cutting the remaining piece in half and laying down the one of the 2 pieces as if rebuilding the original. So, and here's a picture of what we're doing. All right. So we start off at stage 1 with 1/2. All right, there's 1/2. And at stage 2, we have 1/2, but we also have 1/4, right? So that's 1/4, and when we do that, we get 3/4. All right. At stage 3, we've got 1/2, 1/4, and 1/8. So 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8, and that's going to give us 7/8. And then at stage 4, we're going to have 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 plus 1/16. Let's write that here. All right, we've got 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 plus 1/16, and that's going to give us a total of 15/16, right? We only have 1/16 left. Well, there's another way to do that, all right? There's another way to find that answer. And the other way to do that is to take the total and subtract what we took out, all right? So the total here is going to be 1 minus 1/2, which is 1/2. The total here is going to be, well, 1 minus both of these together, so that's 1 minus, we got 3/4. Well, what's left? So we're subtracting what's left here. So 1 minus 1/4, right? It's going to give us a total of 3/4. So if I subtract from 1 whatever piece I still have, it's going to tell us, you know, whatever piece is missing is going to tell us what we have. We're rebuilding this piece. So this would be 1 minus 1/8, right? And that'll give me the total right there. There's literally 1 minus 1/8 right there. It gives me the same 7/8 without having to add all these up. And this one would be 1 minus 1/16 right here, 1 minus 1/16, which is going to give me the same 15/16 without having to add up the individual parts. So there's 2 ways we know to get it, all right? And let's just reflect on this real quick, right? We know that we had 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 plus 1/16 forever, all right? And we know that our geometric ratio is 1/2. All right. Now, we're going to do a couple more things, just a little bit further. All right. So, from the table, you wrote 4 related finite geometric series, right? We wrote 1/2, then 1/2 plus 1/4, then 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8, then 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 plus 1/16. Remember, we wrote that right here, right? And there was also another way. Describe the other way, right? We also subtracted the last term from 1. All right. And if we were to write that, right, if instead of writing, so if the process of cutting the remaining pieces of paper and laying them down one piece is continued, you obtain the finite geometric series, and here it is, 1/2 plus 1/4 plus, assuming that we're continuing that pattern, plus 1/2 to the n, at stage n. So what if we use this portion? Well, it's much easier to do it like this. We can also subtract the last term. So I could say 1 minus 1/2 to the n, right? Because this piece is what we subtracted from 1. Whatever we added last is what we subtracted from 1. I'm going to show you that really quick. So if the last thing I added was 3/4 or 1/4, what I subtracted was 1/4. The last thing I added was 1/8, what I subtracted was 1/8. The last thing I added was 1/16, what I subtracted from 1 was 1/16. So we could either use this, or we could say, hey, 1 minus the last term. I'm going to pause there, because we're about to take this and turn it into something a little funky. I think this one's not too bad. And the next part's a little harder to understand, and hopefully we can lay it out so it's nice and easy.